It's that time, guys. It's that time. I'm doing the top 10 movies that I've seen in 2020. Okay? I dug through the Netflix. I dug through the Amazon Prime just to find the gold nuggets. That's what I've been doing. And I came with a list of the top 10 movies. Now, the way this top 10 is going to work, I'm going to start with my top 10 movies of the year. And then I'm going to talk about all the other films that I've seen that were released in 2020. So hang on to your butts. This is going to be a long video. Go grab a popcorn. Maybe go grab a beer. And we'll review these movies all together. So starting with the top 10. Then for the 2020 recap, I decided to separate it into 3 tiers. Tier 3, Tier 2, and Tier 1. Tier 1 being my favorites, Tier 3 being movies that just weren't for me. This is a really good year for film, okay? I know COVID-19 kind of fucked over the whole year, fucked over basically every aspect of our life. Obviously, it's a tragedy, but it's also fucking over our social life. It's fucking over sports. It's fucking over entertainment. I am confident in saying that these 10 movies are very, very good movies. And I'd say even this top 10 that I have here is comparable to other top 10s that I've had in previous years. Maybe not 2019, that was an exceptionally good year, in my opinion. But previous years, I think this top 10 is comparable as far as quality film. That's why I kind of wanted to do this list. I feel like a lot of people on the internet, they're just like, oh, it's been a shit year of movies, I haven't seen many, but I'm gonna make my top 10 anyway. It's like, no. You gotta look a bit. They're not gonna have a big poster in front of your theater. You're gonna have to dig a little for these movies, which I have done, and I've come out with 10 movies that I thought were pretty great. Just a note on myself, what I prefer in my film. So I ran into an old acquaintance the other day, and we started talking about entertainment because he knows that I'm into film and he wanted my opinion on certain things. And it came into the topic of television, to which he said, I think TV is going to take the place of film. And they're not inherently that different. The only thing different between film and TV shows is the runtime. So I don't think it will ever take the place of film. But we gotta recognize the strengths and weaknesses of each one. I think television is better at film when it comes to fleshing things out. You have a longer runtime, the characters feel more fleshed out, the story feels more fleshed out. But film has one advantage that television doesn't have, and that advantage is it gets to be a little more weird, a little more experimental. You can do that with a 2-hour runtime versus a 12-episode series, because you're not going to have your audience's attention for that long. So if you're going to be a little more weird and wacky, your best bet is to go with the shorter runtime. And my top 10 is reflective of that kind of mentality. When I watch film, I kind of want to see something I haven't seen before. Now that's not to say that my top 10 doesn't have movies that are in fact not that groundbreaking but very effective. It does have that, but I think I naturally gravitate towards that kind of movie in everyday life. So this is basically my top 10 favorite movies of the year. Movies that I think will stand the test of time. Movies that will look back and like, wow, that movie tried something different. That movie was a little weird. That movie kind of showed me something I've never seen before. That's kind of the movies I naturally gravitate towards. So that's what's in my top 10. At the end of this video as well, I'm going to talk about TV shows and specials that I've watched throughout the year, although those are a few. So without further ado, let's do number 10. So my number 10 movie is The Vast of Night. So this was an Amazon Prime original film that I've reviewed on this channel before. All the reviews that I've done before, I'm going to tag them up above, so keep an eye out for that if you want to see a more elaborate explanation of the films that I've reviewed before. Needless to say, I thought this movie was really entertaining. It's hard for a movie to hook its audience when it's just being done through dialogue. And this was a first-time director, first-time writer. It was based on a radio series, so that's why it kind of has that radio feel. But it always had my attention, and the set design, the feel of the 1950s, those beautiful swooping camera shots going from one location to another. This movie really did it for me. And it's a movie about aliens, but spoiler, the alien doesn't really come until the tail end of the film. It's more about the build up to that point. And I thought it was really, really effective. So number 10, Vast of Night. Number 9 is the Canadian in me, I guess. Possessor. I thought this movie was excellent. Really bizarre, creepy imagery going on. And just a story that doesn't feed you the information like a normal movie would. You kind of have to interpret things on your own. But some of the imagery in this movie just like is burnt into my mind, it seems. Like the shots of like the hand kind of melting. That shot that's on the poster of the mask. Just some really cool imagery going on in this, and a really compelling story and really good characters. It really has that Cronenberg vibe, even though it was directed by his son. Like that graphic violence and that beautiful cinematography, really good use of lighting. I thought this movie was a trip. I thought it was awesome. Number 8, Color Out of Space. Who would have thought Nicolas Cage in a top 10 movies of the year? But here he is. Nicolas Cage stars in Color Out of Space, directed by Richard Stanley. This is a great throwback to movies like Reanimator, movies like From Beyond, just those colorful H.P. Lovecraft movies. And this is a really awesome story. Spoiler, I'm gonna spoil. But that scene where the mom gets fused to the baby, oh my god, that's like the screeches of that monster, it's still like fused in my brain. Like, this was a really, really awesome, colorful horror movie. And something I didn't mention in my review is that this is the first part in a trilogy that Richard Stanley is doing where he's adapting H.P. Lovecraft stories. And honestly, I can't wait to see where he goes from here. This was a really fun movie. I don't see this being on many people's top 10. It just struck home for me. Number 7 is a movie I haven't reviewed on this channel. It's called Another Round. It's a Danish film from the director of The Hunt, stars Mads Mikkelsen, which most people know from James Bond Casino Royale. He was the Bond villain in that. Basically follows 4 high school teachers, and they try to keep their alcohol blood level at a certain number, and they say that that's going to make your life better, it's going to make you more confident, more outgoing, and it's going to therefore make your relationships better. And this movie isn't like a preachy PSA on why alcohol is bad. It does, in fact, show the positives and the repercussions that come with that kind of lifestyle. But ultimately, this is a movie about liberation and how there are some consequences that come with that feeling of liberation. You follow this character that's very reserved, and all of a sudden he becomes liberated, and how his life changes when that happens. I thought this was a really interesting movie. I love The Hunt. I think I like the Another Round a little more than The Hunt. I haven't seen The Hunt in a while, but I thought this movie was very compelling. Number 6, another movie I haven't reviewed. It's Promising Young Woman. This is actually the last movie I watched before making this top 10, and I thought this was a very, very fun slasher film. A lot of people complain about when Hollywood does the gender switch in films, when they go from a male cast to a female cast, when you have like Ghostbusters, and it's like, oh, Ghostbusters, but with women. This is an example of the gender swap done right. This is basically an 80s slasher movie, but the slasher now is a woman and the victims are men. And just like in those 80s slasher films where the horror character was punished, in this film the male horror characters are punished. And it really gave me that vibe. It kind of felt edgy, kind of had that hot pink, hot topic-y vibe to it. It was a very fun movie. I love Carey Mulligan as an actress. I loved her in movies like Drive, and I haven't seen her in a while, but this was a really good return for her. I think this is her best performance she's ever done. And this movie was a direct response to the hashtag #MeToo movement, and it doesn't feel overly preachy. It doesn't feel like it's talking down to you. It doesn't feel simple. It shows a lot of the gray that goes with that movement. I thought this was a very compelling movie. It's really reflective of the time, yet the movie is timeless. So that movie, Promising Young Woman, is number 6. Number 5, I'm Thinking of Ending Things. Another movie I haven't reviewed on this channel. This is directed and written by Charlie Kaufman. Basically follows a couple, and the girl wants to break up with the guy, but she doesn't want to do it. And Charlie Kaufman, to me, has always been more of a horror director than a drama director, but he's not coined as such. He's really good at taking these simple anxieties we have in everyday life and stretching them to a 2-hour-long film. He really is, you can tell this guy is an anxious, neurotic personality, and that really translates to his films. And this whole film really made me uncomfortable the whole way through. And it should, because we've all been in that situation where we have to break up with someone, or we have to end a certain friendship, but we just don't know when and how to do it, and it's just like, that movie plays on that anxiety. And just like Possessor, this movie has a lot of abstract elements, but I never felt like, oh, this is weird just for the sake of being weird. I thought there was a lot of meaning to that film, just like there was a lot of meaning to Possessor, and for that reason, it's my number 5 movie of the year. Number 4, Feels Good Man. So this is a documentary about Pepe the Frog, and it's basically a documentary about how one man's art becomes misinterpreted by the public and used for harm. I thought it's a very compelling story. It was something I wasn't too familiar with, yet it doesn't feel like a boomer directed it. This is just a really, again, it's timely but timeless at the same time. So number 4, Feels Good Man. I have a review of that movie over at my channel. Number 3, Netflix original movie, The Devil All the Time. This is a movie that not many people are giving the recognition it deserves. Basically, it's a bunch of little vignettes that all take place in the American South, and it kind of has like that crime, pulpy feel to it. Has an all-star cast. People like Robert Pattinson are in this, people like Tom Holland. And I was on the edge of my seat for the whole runtime of this film. And this film does have a longer runtime, but there's never a dull moment in this movie. There's always some suspense building up, or something happens, or something comes out of left field that you weren't expecting, but it feels deserved. A lot of the movies on this top 10, like Vast of Night, Possessor, and Color Out of Space, and all those movies, I'm gonna have a tough time recommending to my friends that aren't that into film. Devil All the Time is a movie that I can recommend to anyone, because it's just such a cool movie. It really reminded me of maybe like a Pulp Fiction or a Magnolia, but all of the stories in here have like this constant theme of the devil lurking and like corrupting people. Just an overall fun movie. It's on Netflix. Go ahead and watch it. You're not going to be bored, trust me. This is a really good movie. It's my number 3 movie of the year. Number 2 is a movie I feel like it's not getting the recognition it deserves. I'm looking at other people's top 10s, and this is not on many people's. The movie is Mank, directed by David Fincher. Legendary director at this point, I would say. Gone Girl, Seven, Fight Club, Social Network, ton of movies. This is a different movie for David Fincher. And I feel like that's why it isolated so many viewers. It really is a niche film because it's a movie about Citizen Kane. And not many people have seen Citizen Kane except people who go to film school, I guess. And this movie has its niche, don't get me wrong. But I so happen to fall in that niche, so whatever. I like this movie. I thought this was a great movie. Great performance by Gary Oldman. Themes of propaganda and trying to get your voice heard and people trying to silence you. Themes of not giving a fuck about what you're saying. This movie was written way before this movie's release, but it somehow manages to be very relevant to today. Overall, just a great movie in my opinion. I think this is one of my favorite David Fincher films, I'd go as far as to say, and I don't throw that lightly. This is actually a really good movie. I don't think I could recommend this movie to many people, unfortunately, but I did really enjoy it, and that's why it's my number 2. Number 1. What is it gonna be? I'll give you a hint. It's not something I've talked about on this channel. This was a surprise to me. A medium surprise. The movie is Minari. And the reason why I say medium surprise is because it flew under my radar, even though it shouldn't, because it was produced by A24. Great film company, makes banger films. I thought this movie was very, very, very compelling. Follows a South Korean family as they immigrate from South Korea into America in the 1980s, and the father tries to start a farm and start a farming business. It's about hard work and what it's like to be an immigrant in America. I think this movie kind of hit home for me because my grandparents are immigrants, so it kind of reflects their hard work as well. But even if you don't have that connection like I do, I think this is a really well done film. Excellent cinematography, great performance by Steven Yeun. I have a problem with modern movies and their portrayal of racism being too overt, too over the top, or too forced, not realistic. This movie does what I like to see. It really shows that feeling of being an outsider, of not fitting into society, without it having like some generic character that's just there to be racist. And there is like some scenes where there is some more overt racism, but it's through the child point of view, and it's like kids bullying each other, which is a lot more pertinent in today's society than just like some overtly racist boss who says, "I'm not gonna hire you because you're a South Korean." I thought this movie was very good. You should watch this movie. It's fantastic. I got a little choked up at some scenes in this movie. And, yeah, it just struck home for me. How good is South Korea, by the way? Like, just last year, Parasite. This year, Minari. South Korea could be the next Hollywood. Who knows? Maybe? No, maybe not. I don't know. I'm just talking out of my ass. So, I'm gonna go through the... I'm gonna go get some water. I need some water. Water. Water would be nice. Dang, I was a thirsty boy. So that's my number 1 film. I'm actually just gonna recap my top 10. Number 10, Vast of Night. Number 9, Possessor. Number 8, Color Out of Space. Number 7, Another Round. Number 6, Promising Young Woman. Number 5, I'm Thinking of Ending Things. Number 4, Feels Good Man. Number 3, The Devil All the Time. Number 2, Mank. And number 1, Minari. Now I'm going to go through the tiers, starting with tier 3. These are all the movies that I've seen throughout the year, starting with my tier 3. So in my tier 3, these are movies that didn't really hit it for me, just not up my alley. So, oh, sorry, sparkling water. So, Train to Busan 2. I reviewed this for a Garage Zombie-thon. Wasn't really for me, you know. Definitely a step down from the first Train to Busan, and this didn't feel at all like the same director as the first Train to Busan, even though it was. Just so messy. I did, however, like the part with like the arena and the zombies in it, and it kind of felt like Mad Max Thunderdome. Just overall underwhelming movie. Some really, really questionable CG. Other than that, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, just not for me. I thought the movie was unfocused. I wish it kind of took the themes it brought up and delved into them a bit more. One thing I didn't mention in my review, I am aware this movie is written by the playwright who made Fences, and I thought Fences was a lot better film. It was definitely more well-crafted, in my opinion. Whereas this, I thought the transition from stage play to film just didn't work the same way as it did with Fences. So I thought Ma Rainey's Black Bottom was a little underwhelming. Midnight Sky, I have a review on my channel. It just feels like boring, generic sci-fi film, although it did feel good to see George Clooney back, I guess. And First Cow, again, I reviewed on my channel. This A24 managed to be in the top #1 film of the year, but somehow made the tier 3. I thought this movie was slow. I thought the theme didn't merit the runtime. Some beautiful cinematography in this, some cool sets, some good music, but overall the film was just a bit too slow. Next, I'm going to go into tier 2. These are movies that I thought were mixed to good, I guess. Borat subsequent Moviefilm. I feel like this movie has aged already. The reason why I find movies don't make for good topical, not a good medium for topical subject matter, is by the time this movie was released, I feel, I've already seen all the coronavirus jokes on Reddit. I've already seen all the Trump jokes on Reddit. And this movie kind of felt like too late to the game, even though it came out as, like, the production was very quick on this. I just didn't feel like the movie was definitely not as funny as the original Borat, and I think everyone can agree with that. Since this movie has been out for a while, I will talk about what my favorite scene was, the scene where I laughed at. I like the scene where he goes dressed as a Jew, and he goes into the synagogue, and he's dressed like his interpretation of what a Jew is. I thought that scene was very funny. The other scene that, like, made me, like, cringe, I felt like there was definitely a less cringe comedy in this movie versus the original, but the one scene that, like, really, like, took me aback was, he goes to, like, the billionaire ballroom, and he's talking with one of the billionaires, and he says, "Oh, you want to know how much my daughter is?" or something along the lines of that. And the billionaire just like, "Yeah, sure, how much?" And his daughter just whacks him across the face like, "Dad!" I thought that scene was good, but overall it was too few and far between in my opinion. Next, Black is King. I've reviewed that on my channel as well. Kind of felt like a Beyonce vanity project, not gonna lie. I feel like it could have been a lot better, and I do actually enjoy the music on that album. I just feel like this poor Jay-Z, he looks so miserable in this marriage. I saw him in the film, he looked like he didn't want to be there doing that face. Oof, poor Jay-Z. Hillbilly Elegy, I've reviewed on this channel before, just a mixed movie to me. I was not aware of what the controversy was. I did talk about, like, I talked about some Vox article, but I didn't understand how widespread it was. So people have a problem with this movie not being... Let me take a step back. So people read the book, and they took that as, oh, this is the reason why people voted for Trump. It was basically it was almost like an anatomy of why someone would vote for Trump, and that's what the book was. Unintentionally, it's just people interpreted the book as such. And then the movie failed to do that and showed too much sympathy towards its characters. My brother explained that controversy to me. I don't really follow these things, so I feel like whatever. Like, I don't care about that. I feel like everything nowadays has a political situation attached to it. Like, I was talking about Minari with my friend Jacky, and he was like, "Oh, did you hear the controversy?" And I'm like, how can you get a controversy out of Minari? It's like the most straightforward movie ever. You can't make this controversial. I feel like everything has a political issue to it. I watched Hillbilly Elegy and I was just like, it is what it is. It's fine. Not much to it. If people think that it's not anti-Trump enough, it is what it is. All film is subjective. Next, I have Sound of Metal, which I've reviewed on this channel before. Medium. It could have been a lot better. I have a more elaborate review on my channel. I'll just tag it. So, movies that I haven't seen, or that I haven't reviewed on this channel, sorry. The Invisible Man. I thought there were some themes in The Invisible Man that were pretty interesting. The whole reasoning of her running away is that the boyfriend's abusive. I thought that was the interesting thing about this movie. I thought that was the meat of the movie. Where this movie kind of fails for me is like, this is a Blumhouse film, so they made The Conjuring and other horror movies like that, Insidious. And I feel like it's like as if the producer was like, okay, you gotta put a jump scare in here. And even though the scene isn't necessarily scary, they'll like throw in a noise in there, even though it's not really merited. So the trappings of the Blumhouse film overshadowed to me what was actually interesting about this movie, and it was that it's a movie about a woman getting abused. So, but Elizabeth Moss in this movie was really good. I think she stole the show. Next. What else do I have? The Five Bloods. So this was the Spike Lee movie that was made for Netflix, coming fresh off of Black Klansman, which I thought was a decent film. Spike Lee is he's a really good filmmaker, don't get me wrong. I love Crooklyn. I love the Do the Right Thing. Those to me are the two I always go to. I have a problem when Spike Lee... Everyone knows Spike Lee is not the most subtle filmmaker out there. And like, Black Klansman, I watched that movie and I was like, okay, I can see why he would make this movie nowadays. It's really pertinent to nowadays. And you watch that movie and it's perfect, you think it's done, and you're like, wow, that was solid. It was really pertinent to nowadays, but he told a story that was relevant back in the 1970s. And then he just had to throw in Donald Trump in the ending, even though Donald Trump was not relevant to the story. He throws in Donald Trump in this movie that takes place in the 70s. And it just doesn't fit. And you go and you're like, Spike, I love you, but why didn't you just cut that ending out? It just doesn't work with the rest of the movie. And I feel like while Black Klansman is, I'll look over that because the rest of the movie was good in my opinion. The Five Bloods, there's a bit more of what I didn't like about that in Black Klansman. It gets a little too obvious when the bad guy has a MAGA hat. And it's like, okay, Spike Lee is not subtle, and that's something he's got to work on. But the things that I did like about this movie is that how the conflicts the character had were really interesting. Them questioning, how do I fight for my country in Vietnam if my country has been so historically racist towards my people? That's what I thought was interesting about the movie. And whenever the characters went through that conflict, I thought that was interesting. And the scene with the landmines really had me on the edge of my seat. Like, when that happened, it came out of nowhere. And the whole movie, you're like kind of anxious because you're expecting that to happen again. I thought that was all... The thing with Spike Lee is that the highs are going to be really high and the lows are going to be really low. So it kind of depends on which film. A recent movie that Spike Lee made that I feel people don't give the recognition it deserves is actually Chirac. I really like Chirac. I feel like that's creative in its own right. And yeah, I thought The Five Bloods was just a little underwhelming and a little less subtle than what Spike Lee usually does, which is not subtle to begin with. I don't want it to feel like I'm bashing Spike Lee. I think he's really interesting. I really like him as a filmmaker. I just feel like he's capable of better than The Five Bloods, and we have seen better, because I thought Chirac was better, and I thought Black Klansman was better. What else? The Platform. I forgot this movie came out this year. I don't know what country this movie is from, but it was pretty viral on Netflix when it came out. And it kind of has this Black Mirror premise to it, where everyone goes to this tower, and the people on the top floor get the food, and the platform goes all the way down to the bottom floor, and the bottom people get basically the scraps. And the premise is pretty Black Mirror-y, but way less subtle and clever, in my opinion. It's not till halfway through the movie. I was watching this with my brother, and like, halfway through the movie, it feels like they just said, like, fuck it, let's just go crazy. There's a part where there's a character trying to go to the top floor, and someone legit takes down their pants, squats, and takes a shit right in their face.
Help me! Help me out!
So it goes from, like, this creepy dystopian movie to, like, this schlocky film. I don't know why that was in the film, but this movie was a little all over the place, but I will say that it kind of left a mark in my life, so. And also, Palm Springs. I didn't review this movie on my channel. A lot of people are enjoying this film. I feel like it's a little too rehash, because the whole Groundhog Day thing has been played over and over again. So, when Edge of Tomorrow came out, it was like, oh, that was awesome. It was like Groundhog Day mixed with, like, an action movie. And then they made Happy Death Day, and it was like, oh, okay, that was like a horror movie mixed with Groundhog Day. And then they made, like, that Naked movie on Netflix, and it's like, oh, it's a shitty comedy mixed with Groundhog Day. And now this movie comes along, and it's like a rom-com mixed with Groundhog Day. And I'm just overall a little sick of the whole Groundhog Day shtick. It's been done to death at this point. Yeah, it's a rom-com mixed with Groundhog Day. It's harmless. It's just it's not something I'd go revisit. I thought it could be better. Like, I thought the premise kind of just turned me off, and the whole movie was kind of playing it out as a secret too. Because you look at the IMDb summary of this film, and it's like, oh, the strange things happen. And it turns out the strange thing is basically Groundhog Day. It's like, why were you keeping that a secret? I don't know. So finally, Cuties. I'm not going to go into that again. I have my video on my channel. I reviewed it. I tried to be as careful as possible. I'm done. I'm burying Cuties. Schlack. Okay, top tier films. These were the films that didn't make the top 10, but I thought were an enjoyable time. I'm going to start with the movies that I've reviewed already. So I've reviewed Soul. I thought Soul was really entertaining. Best Pixar movie in a while. Tenet. A lot of people are mixed about Tenet. I thought this was a good movie. It was a quality film, as I would expect from Christopher Nolan. The action in this is crazy! This is the best action Christopher Nolan's ever directed, in my opinion. The Trial of the Chicago 7, a little underwhelming by Aaron Sorkin's standards, in my opinion, but that's only because those standards are so high. But I overall thought The Trial of the Chicago 7 was pretty good. Little Oscar baity, but good nonetheless. Next, Beastie Boys' Story. I hesitate to even call that a film. It's more of a live performance, but it is what it is. And Bad Education, movie with Hugh Jackman about the public school scandal that occurred in Rhode Island or Long Island. I can't really remember. But anyway, so those are the films I reviewed already on this channel. Next, I'm going to talk about the films that I haven't reviewed on this channel that were good but didn't make the top 10. So this was number 11 on my list. If I had to put a number 11 on my top 10, it would be this movie. And that movie is Shirley. Again, with Elizabeth Moss. I said she was good in The Invisible Man. She's equally, if not better, in this film. And I was surprised to see that Martin Scorsese himself is an executive producer on this film. And I have my complaints with the biopic genre. I think, like, they try to span the person's life too long, and it just feels too bloated. This movie, it's a lot more focused. So this movie is about Shirley Jackson, and she's struggling to write her next book. And she takes in her husband's students into her house. They board at her house. And the wife, or one of the students, who's the wife, becomes the muse to Shirley Jackson. And they develop kind of a weird friendship. And I thought this movie was very compelling. I thought Elizabeth Moss was terrific in this film. There's a lot of scenes that kind of, like, made me uncomfortable, made me feel weird. It's not like a horror movie, even though it's advertised as such. I just think it's a very good biopic. And unlike most biopics that I watch these days, this one actually made me look up who's Shirley Jackson, who was she like in her personal life. Just an overall entertaining movie, in my opinion. Gotta take a sip of water. That was definitely more than a sip. Next, Love and Monsters. My dad made me watch this movie, which is funny, I guess. Yeah, we're still recording. So yeah, my dad made me watch this movie because he liked it, and I thought it was really enjoyable as well. Great movie for the family. I feel like they don't make family movies anymore that are good, like Goonies and stuff like that. This was an overall very fun movie, great action, great characters, just very fun to watch. I suggest that you watch this with the family. This is a movie that both kids and parents will like alike. Like alike. Jeez. Yeah, very fun movie. Character starts off as a dweeb, learns to be a hero. Michael Rooker's in this film, the great Michael Rooker. Yondu himself. Alright, next I have Uncle Frank. Uncle Frank was a good movie in my opinion. It started off very strong, and where the movie kind of lost me is when it became from this coming-of-age road trip film, and it kind of became this melodrama about homosexuality, which I don't mind, but I thought the first half was much more interesting when it was about this girl discovering that her uncle is gay as she's going through this coming-of-age phase in her life and going on this road trip, getting to know her uncle. I thought that was the more interesting part of the film. Then the second half, it becomes flashbacks about his tragic past, and it goes back and forth, and I didn't think that was as entertaining. The problem with that, the problem with this, I'm getting into controversial territory, I know. There is a problem I've noticed. You go on Netflix and you go on the categories of film or the genres, and they have gay and lesbian as a genre. Gay and lesbian is not a genre to me. You have to make the genre something else. And the film started off, it's a road trip movie, it's a coming-of-age film, and it's a family kind of drama. And I thought that was interesting, that's your genre. And then it slowly became that quote-unquote gay and lesbian genre, which that's where it kind of lost my interest. But the first half of this movie was very strong. Another movie I would say that doesn't do the whole gay genre thing I'm talking about, Call Me By Your Name. I don't see that as a gay and lesbian genre film. I see that as a romantic film. So, Uncle Frank was good when it was a road movie, a coming-of-age film. Kind of lost me when it just became, Yeah, I've said what I had to say. I don't want to make people feel uncomfortable, I guess. On the Rocks was an enjoyable time. A lot of people hate on Sofia Coppola just because she played in The Godfather 3. Sofia Coppola is a competent director, okay? I love Lost in Translation. She's able to make movies. Obviously, she's not going to be Francis Ford Coppola. No one is Francis Ford Coppola. The fucker directed The Godfather. Okay? He made Apocalypse Now. Okay? Dude, do you know how fucking big those shoes are to fill? Stop comparing Sofia Coppola to Francis Ford Coppola. Okay? Lost in Translation is a great film. I like Marie Antoinette. Haven't seen what was the last movie she made? The Begotten or something like that? Haven't seen that one, but I thought this one was enjoyable. Bill Murray, charming dude. You gotta love him. Yeah, it's like a warm blanket film. Kind of felt Woody Allen-ish. It just felt like a cozy movie. But overall, it's not something I will gravitate. It's not something I'll revisit. I'm gonna keep this one for last because this one was like the biggest surprise of 2020. Next, I have Bacurau. This was a Brazilian film. I thought Bacurau had some interesting things. It really felt like a movie like High Noon, where the whole time it's like this small town, and you're just waiting for like the big shootout to go down, and the movie builds it up that it's gonna be this big blood fest. But a problem I had with the movie is that the big gore scene is halfway through the film, and then you arrive and it's gonna be that big showdown, and it just doesn't. It fails in comparison to that gore scene I'm talking about. But it was a fun time. It's like a weird, modern. It kind of feels like a mix of Mad Max, a western, and like a hint of sci-fi in there. Also, I wish that we spent more time with the town itself and less time with the bad guys. Because I felt like the bad guys were underdeveloped, and I felt like the town people were underdeveloped as well. I wish it was more of a straightforward High Noon type of film. Next, The Gentleman. A lot of people are calling this a return to form for Guy Ritchie, to which I say, he never left. I loved Man from U.N.C.L.E. I'm probably the only guy who liked that movie. I didn't see Aladdin, so if they're referring to Aladdin, I guess I understand. But I really like Man from U.N.C.L.E., and I really like The Gentleman as well. It's everything you would expect from a Guy Ritchie movie. Fast dialogue, cool action scenes, cool characters. A lot of people say he's a Tarantino ripoff. Maybe in his early career, but they've definitely split off at this point, where I look forward to watch a Tarantino movie and I look forward to watch a Guy Ritchie movie, both separately, both for different reasons. I like The Gentleman a lot. It did lack in certain things. I felt like sometimes I was checking my watch waiting for something to happen. And obviously when you compare this to some of Guy Ritchie's greats like Snatch and Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, this one fails in comparison. But that's not to say that this is not a good movie. It is a very good movie. It's a little been there, done that is what I mean. Like, it's nothing new. It's everything you've come to expect with a Guy Ritchie movie. This movie borrowed a lot of things from the movie Seven Psychopaths too, if you watched that one. And it was very reminiscent of that movie, but I thought Seven Psychopaths was a lot better. So, yeah. Very solid movie, just not very original. But still very good. It's everything you've come to expect with a Guy Ritchie, and for that I deduct points. It's everything you've come to expect. Okay, I kept this one for last, because this movie is the biggest surprise of 2020. My friend, he told me, you gotta watch this movie, and I was like, get the fuck out of here! I'm not watching that shit! And then my brother was like, Paul, you gotta watch this movie, and I was like, get the fuck out of here! You're talking batshit crazy! Guys, it's Hubie Halloween. I don't know why this movie was good. I'm trying to figure it out. Why did I like this movie? I haven't liked anything Adam Sandler has done probably since Zohan. But this movie was just like... It was so random. In the first few minutes of this movie, Adam Sandler grabs a thermos, drinks from the thermos, and then projectile vomits, and it's obviously CG. But I just laughed my ass off. I was like, what the fuck am I watching? Ray Liotta. The great Ray Liotta is in this movie, and his acting, so over the top and so bad, but I don't know why.
I faked it for the doctors, but I'm really just dumb. I never really told anybody. You're probably all surprised. No, I'm not surprised.
This movie kind of felt like a Halloween special. It kind of did what that recent Goosebumps movie did. It kind of just gave me what I wanted. Just like this spooky, like, corny, crappy Halloween special vibe. There's a lot of controversies in Hollywood about straight people playing gay people and stuff like that. And jokes being in bad taste. I'm wondering when people are going to complain about Adam Sandler playing a mentally challenged person. That's not really becoming a controversy yet, but I can see that happening in the near future. But overall, I just thought this movie Look, I'm not one of these guys who's gonna be like, look, this movie is bad, but I laughed, but it's bad. The movie made me laugh. I'm sorry. It's stupid, but sometimes stupid does what it's gotta do. You know? You know, it's like, I was watching this TV show on Netflix. It's Ugly Delicious, and I love this cooking show. I love cooking shows, just a personal thing about me. And the host of that show, I think, made a really good point. He's talking about, hey, look, I can enjoy fancy food, but I can enjoy Domino's as well. And I think people fail to do that. Like, to me, Hubie Halloween is like your McDonald's. Sometimes you just want a fucking McDonald's. Like, who gives a shit? Just go eat McDonald's. Sometimes it's late at night, you're cram studying for a final, you just need something tasty in your mouth. It's not gonna be the best thing ever, you know? They're not putting the best fucking cow in there. It's probably something made of freaking plastic and rubber. But somehow it's good. And same thing with this Hubie Halloween movie. It's like, I'm not gonna... this is like McDonald's, you know? Not every movie is gonna be Possessor where you're gonna think and use all your fucking brain power and think about it hardcore. No. This movie did what it had to do. I'm sure people are gonna be like, what the fuck, Paul? You thought Hubie Halloween was better than Ma Rainey's Black Bottom? And to that I say yes! Because Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, it tried to be fancy food, but it didn't quite work for me. It was probably something a little too strange for me, like some weird fishy scallop with some weird vegetable I've never heard of. So it didn't work for me. But McDonald's, it's McDonald's, you know? I'm done talking about this. Hubie Halloween. Great movie. So that's all the movies I've seen in 2020. God, this video is going to be long. I'm just going to talk about the TV shows and specials that I saw. I only saw 2. So, Tiger King. A lot of people were talking Tiger King. Tiger King is one of those things, like when something's popular, like... let's say Avatar when it came out. Avatar, everyone was talking about it. Oh, it's so awesome, it's amazing. And it got so popular to the point that people started just hating it because it was popular. It was like, oh, it's not even that good, the story sucks, whatever. And another example of that was Juno. When Juno came out, everyone was talking Juno. Oh, this movie is crazy, it's fantastic. And then people were like, it's not that good, the dialogue is cheesy. And it kind of like got some backlash just for being so universally praised. Tiger King is kind of falling into that category, I feel, where it like blew up and everyone was like, oh, Tiger King, it's so awesome, and then like it kind of fell victim to its own popularity. However, I thought Tiger King was really good. I thought this was very interesting. I love trashy television. I love like the kind of shit you get on TLC and seeing like backwards ass people. And this was just entertaining for me, and this from the same director who made the Fire Festival documentary on Netflix, which also blew up. But I just saw the characters, the lead character, Joe Exotic, was very interesting to watch. His fucking rivalry with Carol Baskins. I thought the whole show was pretty good. I will say the show kind of lost my interest when it started focusing on other tiger trainers. Like that guy who was just really creepy with women. Not that I'm sensitive to that subject matter, just that it wasn't as interesting as seeing Joe Exotic. Joe Exotic was so flamboyant and so crazy that he's like the most interesting part of the show. So whenever he's not on camera, you kind of lose interest. And that brings me into something I talked about with my friend. I think, like, Disney Plus is on the rise. Like, soon it's gonna be Disney Plus and Netflix head-to-head. Maybe Amazon Prime as well. And some other dark horse players in the streaming war. I feel like the one thing that Netflix can do that Disney Plus won't be able to do, Netflix is really good at making these niche shows. Look at The Mandalorian. The 2 biggest watch shows of the year of 2020 were The Mandalorian and Queen's Gambit. Now look at a show like The Mandalorian, how much that show costs to make. It's really expensive, and especially that TV show uses modern technology, that 360 digital projection thing. It's a very expensive show to make, and it's got stars. You got people behind the camera like Robert Rodriguez and Jon Favreau that I'm sure aren't cheap, and people in front of the camera as well. However, Netflix, you get people talking just by making a Tiger King. A crappy, not crappy, it's good, but just like a low-budget documentary, a docu-series, and everyone all over the internet's talking about Tiger King. And same thing with Queen's Gambit. Queen's Gambit is just a really, really well-written show, but it's not that expensive to make. So I want to see Netflix. That's what Netflix has been doing, right? If you look at all the movies I've listed off, there's movies that I loved that Netflix made, like Devil All the Time, I'm thinking of Ending Things, Mank. Then there's movies that are like, Han, like The Five Bloods, and Hillbilly Elegy and stuff like that. Then they made movies that I kind of didn't like Midnight Sky. But it just goes to show that Netflix is just trying whatever it wants. It's going all over the place, and you know what? Sometimes it hits the target, sometimes it doesn't, but when it does hit the target, sometimes you have something like a Tiger King or a Fire Festival documentary that's a low-budget project, but it somehow manages to make tons of new subscribers for Netflix, versus Disney, which spends a lot but gets a lot in return. So that's the one advantage financially that I see Netflix having over Disney. Just the fact that they can make something go viral on such a low budget. So I would love to see Netflix expand on that. And obviously, big names in Hollywood are flooding to go work for Netflix. Because do you think David Fincher would be able to make Mank in the studio system? Of course not. It's black and white. It's about a movie no one's seen before. But it was a passion project for him. So he was like, yeah. Last year we saw The Irishman. No one wanted to make The Irishman. It's a $200 million movie with Al Pacino and Robert De Niro, who don't carry the same name power as they did back in the 90s. So, but Netflix is just doing it. They're giving these artists shots. You even get someone like a Charlie Kaufman, just like this weird, quirky dude. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to make a movie for Netflix. And recently there's been news of like Chappelle asking Netflix to take down Chappelle's show, and they did it no problem. That's the road Netflix is going down. That's been why I like Netflix so much. Versus Disney, you hear of so many problems, like, oh, they fired the directors of Han Solo 90% through the filming of the film. That doesn't happen as much as Netflix, and it's because they just fire on all cylinders. I love it. To everyone hating on Netflix, shut the fuck up, is what I'm saying. And lastly, this is the one stand-up special I watched. I watched stand-up comedy too, and it was Sincerely Louis C.K. You won't be able to find this on HBO or Netflix or anything, just because of the Louis C.K. blacklisting. Let's just put that aside. I don't want to get into that, whether he deserves to be blacklisted or not. I don't have the evidence. I don't know what happened. As far as comedy specials go, Louis C.K. is one of my favorite stand-up comedians ever. So naturally, I went and I purchased the stand-up special, and I thought it was hilarious. The one part that made me die of laughter is he's talking about how atheist people think that Jesus was in fact Christian when he was not. He was Jewish. And he says, what, do you think he was getting crucified? And he had a crucifix around his neck. And he was like, oh, that's why I have one of these. I thought that was funny. I thought it's not his best stand-up special, but I think it's still the one he made when, I think it was just called 2017. I think that's his best one. But Louis C.K. is like the king when it comes to observational comedy. And I thought this special was really, really entertaining. And, like, depending on the severity of what he's done, I'd like to see Louis C.K. make a comeback, because I was a huge fan of his TV show. And his stand-up, obviously. And just whenever he was on SNL, it was always funny. So that's what I had to say about that. I'm not aware of what he did, if he's innocent or guilty. I'm hoping he's innocent and he can resume his career because I liked everything he was doing. That's my 2020 recap. Sorry I was a little late, I guess. I tried to do this as quick as possible. But, hey, thanks for sticking around. And I hope to make these top 10s forever and ever. Amen. And A women.